It had been years since Meera had done something just for herself. For decades, her days had belonged to others, to her son, to her daughter-in-law, to the quiet corners of a house that never seemed to rest. But this morning was different. For the first time in years, she felt a spark of excitement, a little nervous, a little guilty, yet deeply alive. She folded her pastel shawl carefully into a small travel bag. A simple trip, just 3 days to visit her sister by the seaside. Nothing grand, just a breath of freedom, the scent of the morning tea mixed with the hum of distant traffic. Meera smiled faintly, whispering to herself, "It's time." But the sound of heels on the marble floor broke the calm. Rhea stood at the doorway, arms crossed, lips pressed tight. "You're going somewhere?" Meera looked up, startled but gentle. "Just a short visit to my sister Beta. I'll be back before the weekend." Rhea's tone hardened. "A visit? At this time? You know I'm hosting guests tomorrow. Who will manage the house? Who will handle the help?" Meera hesitated. "I thought Arjun would—" "Arjun?" Rhea cut in with a laugh that wasn't kind. "He works, Ma. This house runs because I take care of it. Not because you decide to go on little trips." The words hung heavy in the air. Meera's fingers froze on the handle of her bag. She had expected surprise, maybe disapproval, but not this coldness. She tried to reason softly. "It's only a few days. You'll manage fine. You always do." Rhea took a step closer, her eyes sharp. "No, you don't understand. This house needs me, not you. Cancel your trip." For a long moment, neither moved. The clock on the wall ticked loud and cruel. Meera's heart sank, but she said nothing. She looked at her packed bag, a symbol of hope, and then at the door, now blocked by her own family's command. In that silence, something fragile inside her cracked, and something stronger quietly began to rise. The small travel bag still sat by Meera's bed, untouched, as if mocking her with its stillness. She hadn't unpacked it, not yet. Some part of her still hoped that maybe, just maybe, her daughter-in-law would change her mind. Downstairs, Rhea's voice filled the kitchen, sharp, confident, echoing through the hallways like a command. She was instructing the maid about the menu for tomorrow's guests. Meera listened from the doorway, unseen, her hands clasped together. When the list was done, she finally stepped forward. "Rhea, can we talk for a minute?" Rhea didn't look up from her phone. "About what?" Meera took a slow breath. "About the trip. I've already promised my sister I'll come." "She isn't well and—" Rhea's eyes lifted, cold and impatient. "You think you're the only one who has responsibilities, Ma? The house doesn't stop because you feel like taking a break. I have things to manage here." Her tone cut deeper than the words. Meera felt her throat tighten. "I'm not asking for much. Just 3 days. I've done everything I could for this family." You thought wrong," Rhea interrupted sharply, her voice rising. "This house isn't a guest house where people come and go as they please. I need order, stability, not some old woman running off whenever she feels like it." For a moment, Meera said nothing. Her hands trembled slightly as she reached for the counter to steady herself. Arjun entered just then, holding his laptop bag, ready to leave for work. His eyes darted between the two women, his wife glaring, his mother quietly wounded. "Arjun?" Meera said softly, almost pleading. "I was just telling Rhea about my trip. It's only—" Rhea turned to him before Meera could finish. "You tell her. We have guests tomorrow." "Can she really go now?" Arjun sighed, looking tired already. "Mom, maybe postpone it a bit. Rhea's been planning this dinner for weeks." Meera's lips parted, but no words came. Postpone. That word felt so familiar. It had followed her all her life. "Postpone your dreams. Postpone your rest. Postpone your happiness." She forced a smile. "Of course, Beta. I understand." Arjun nodded, relieved, and left for work. Rhea turned back to the counter, resuming her commands to the maid as if nothing had happened. Meera stood there a moment longer, her heart heavy, her dignity bruised, then quietly walked away. The rest of the day passed in a blur of chores and silence. By evening, the laughter of television shows echoed from Rhea's room while Meera sat by the window staring at her phone. Her sister had texted, asking when she'd arrive. Meera typed and deleted several replies before finally sending, "Something came up. Maybe next time." Her thumb hovered over the screen for a moment before she put the phone down. That night, sleep didn't come easily. The walls seemed to whisper her own regrets back to her. Years of swallowed words, of sacrifices no one remembered. She turned toward the window, watching the faint glow of the streetlights. Then, just as she began to drift off, a voice carried through the stillness. Rhea's voice, low, hushed, but clear enough. From the hallway, Meera could hear her talking on the phone. "Yes, I made sure she's not going anywhere," Rhea said. "Don't worry, this house will stay in our name. She doesn't need to know anything." Meera froze. Her breath caught in her throat. "Our name?" For a few seconds, she didn't move. The words replayed again and again in her mind, each time slicing deeper. She sat up slowly, heart pounding. Something wasn't right. This wasn't just control or disrespect. This was something darker. And in that moment, beneath the quiet hum of the night, Meera made herself a silent promise. She would find out exactly what Rhea meant. Sleep didn't come that night. Meera lay awake, eyes fixed on the ceiling, Rhea's words echoing through her mind. "This house will stay in our name." Those 7 words looped in her thoughts like a haunting melody. Our name? Whose name? Hers and Arjun's? Or something else entirely? By dawn, her heart was heavy, but her resolve was sharper. The morning light spilled gently through the curtains as she walked into the old study, the one her husband, Rajesh, had used years ago. The smell of aged wood and old paper lingered there, untouched by time. She ran her fingers over the dusty desk, the worn edges of a photo frame, her and Rajesh on their wedding day, smiling, young, full of promise. "You always said, Rajesh, everything we built would stay safe," she whispered. "Then why do I feel like it's slipping away?" The drawers creaked as she opened them one by one. Inside were forgotten letters, receipts, yellowed notebooks, and beneath a pile of documents, the faint corner of something she hadn't seen in years. A leather envelope, its flap torn, her husband's initials embossed on it. Her pulse quickened. She pulled it out, her hands trembling slightly. The envelope had once been sealed, but now it hung open, as if someone had already been through it. Inside were a few papers, brittle and faded. The will. But a section of it seemed to be missing. A page torn cleanly away. Her stomach dropped. She sat down slowly, scanning what was left. The familiar legal phrases swam before her eyes. Division of property, signatures, witness names. But there was a note written in her husband's careful handwriting on the inner flap of the envelope. To be revealed only if injustice occurs. Her breath caught. What did that mean? Why would he write that? Meera pressed the papers to her chest, fighting a swell of emotion. Somewhere in these missing lines, in this half-buried secret, was the answer to Rhea's confidence. And her cruelty. Just then, footsteps echoed in the hallway. She quickly slipped the documents back into the envelope and tucked it under her shawl. Rhea's voice followed, bright and practiced. "Ma, have you seen the silver serving tray?" "I told the maid it should be polished." Meera composed herself, turning toward the door. "I'll look for it." Rhea smiled thinly. "Good. Guests will be here soon. Try not to misplace things again, okay?" The insult stung, but Meera simply nodded. As Rhea left, her perfume lingered, sweet on the surface, bitter underneath. Once alone again, Meera walked straight to her room and locked the door. Her heart raced as she spread the will out on her bed. The missing page? The warning? It couldn't be a coincidence. Rhea must have seen it. She remembered something else. An afternoon months ago when Rhea had insisted on reorganizing the old storeroom. "It's too cluttered," she had said then. "We should throw out what's unnecessary." Meera hadn't thought much of it, but now she could see it clearly. That was the day Rhea must have found the documents. Determined, Meera tied her dupatta tighter and headed to the storeroom. The air inside was thick with dust and old memories. Boxes stacked high, old clothes bundled in trunks, rusted locks, and a faint smell of mothballs. She began searching carefully, lifting lids, opening drawers, checking between files. Hours passed, sunlight turning golden through the window. Sweat beaded on her forehead, but she didn't stop. Every old paper she touched felt like a fragment of her life, pieces of the truth she was determined to piece together. Finally, behind a stack of broken photo frames, she found a small metal box, locked but with a loose hinge. Inside lay an envelope, fragile with age. Her husband's handwriting again. She opened it carefully. Inside was the missing page, dated, signed, and stamped. Her husband's true will. Her eyes filled with tears as she read the words. In case any attempt is made to alter or misrepresent this will, full ownership of the property shall revert solely to my wife, Meera Rajesh Khanna. A sob escaped her lips. Not of pain, but of relief, of validation. Her husband had foreseen this. He had trusted her, even from beyond. Outside, she could hear Rhea laughing with someone on the phone, confident, careless. Meera folded the document gently, her hands steady now. She looked out the window, the evening light painting her face with quiet strength. You wanted this house, Rhea, she murmured softly. But you forgot. I built it first. And for the first time in a long while, Meera smiled. Not with bitterness, but with purpose. The battle had begun. Rhea had spent the entire morning giving orders. Florist, caterer, decorators. Her voice echoing through every room of the house. From behind the kitchen door, Meera quietly helped the maid arrange trays of sweets, her hands working mechanically while her mind drifted elsewhere. The torn page from her husband's will rested safely inside her wardrobe, hidden between the folds of her old cerise. It was her secret weapon, the proof of truth that waited for the right moment. But she knew she couldn't reveal it too soon. One wrong move, and Rhea would twist the story, just like she always did. By evening, the house was transformed. Warm lights glowed, guests arrived in silken smiles, and laughter floated through the air. But beneath the music and chatter, Meera felt a different rhythm, a quiet tension that pulsed beneath her skin. Ma, please bring more tea to the living room, Rhea called out sweetly, her voice honeyed with performance. And try to hurry, yes? Meera nodded silently, carrying the tray with steady hands. She stepped into the room where Rhea sat surrounded by guests, neighbors, relatives, a few of Arjun's colleagues. Rhea looked radiant, draped in a shimmering gold saree, playing the perfect hostess. As Meera poured the tea, Rhea began speaking. Her tone loud enough for everyone to hear. You know, she said, with a laugh that dripped of cruelty masked as charm, Ma was planning a little vacation all alone. Can you imagine? I told her, who will manage the house if you're gone? She nearly ran away on us. The guests laughed politely, not knowing where to look. Arjun gave a weak smile, clearly uncomfortable. Meera froze mid-pour. The cup trembled slightly in her hand. She wanted to disappear, to swallow the humiliation quietly like she always did. But something inside her cracked again, only this time it didn't break. It hardened. Rhea continued, still smiling. At this age, she wants adventure. Maybe she'll find some peace finally, she joked, sipping her tea with exaggerated grace. Meera placed the tray down and stepped back, her voice steady. Yes, peace would be nice, she said softly, especially in one's own home. The room fell silent for a beat. Rhea's smile faltered just for a second. Then she laughed it off, waving her hand. Oh, Ma, you always take things so seriously. Arjun coughed lightly and changed the topic, steering the conversation toward work. The noise resumed, but the sting remained. Meera excused herself quietly and walked toward her room, her heart pounding. She closed the door, pressing her back against it, trying to calm the storm inside her chest. Her husband's voice seemed to echo in her mind, steady, kind, protective. Never let anyone steal your dignity, Meera, not even under your own roof. Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't wipe them away. They weren't weakness anymore. They were fuel. Hours later, when the last guest had left and the lights dimmed, Meera moved silently through the house. Rhea's laughter trailed from the living room as she scrolled through her phone, likely posting pictures of her perfect evening. Meera's steps took her to the study again. She opened the safe drawer, one Rhea had recently insisted on managing. The combination had been changed, but Meera knew the sound of tumblers, the way each click echoed slightly differently. Her husband had taught her long ago. After a few careful turns, the lock released with a soft click. Inside were neatly arranged folders, jewelry boxes, and one thick brown envelope marked transfer of property. Meera pulled it out slowly, her breath uneven. She opened it and froze. Inside were photocopies of her own signatures, forged perfectly. The papers stated that ownership of the house was being transferred to Arjun and Rhea by the mutual consent of Mrs. Meera Rajesh Khanna. The date printed on the document was only a week old. For a long time, she just stared at the page, her mind numb, her body cold. So that's what Rhea meant. That's what the whispers were about. Her hands trembled, but her eyes blazed with clarity. She carefully refolded the papers and placed them back exactly as they were. She couldn't let Rhea know, not yet. When she stepped out of the study, Rhea was in the hallway, startled to see her. "Ma, what are you doing up so late?" Meera smiled faintly, her voice calm but heavy with meaning. "Just making sure everything is in its right place." Rhea frowned, suspicious, but said nothing. As Meera returned to her room, she looked once more at the dark window pane where her reflection stared back at her. Older, wiser, unbroken, she whispered under her breath. "You can humiliate me in front of the world, Rhea, but now I hold the truth." And with that quiet vow, she turned off the light. The night outside was silent, but inside Meera's heart, justice had already begun to stir. Morning broke quietly, like the calm before a storm that had been waiting for years. Sunlight crept through the lace curtains of Meera's room, tracing soft patterns across her face. She sat at the edge of her bed, holding a cup of tea that had long gone cold. Her mind was far from the ordinary routines of the day, the forged papers replayed in her memory, every line carved into her thoughts. Each signature was a wound, but also a weapon. She finally understood what her husband's will had meant, what he'd tried to protect her from. Today, she wouldn't hide. She dressed simply, in her pale ivory sari with a faded border, the same one she'd worn at her husband's funeral. There was something poetic about wearing it again. It wasn't grief anymore. It was resolve. Downstairs, Rhea was already barking orders to the maid. No, that's not how I want the cushions arranged. Arjun's boss might visit today, and this house must look perfect." Meera walked down the stairs slowly. Her steps were light, but her presence filled the room. "Don't worry," she said evenly. "It will look exactly as it should." Rhea turned, mildly surprised. "Oh, good morning, Ma. You're up early." "I didn't sleep," Meera replied, her eyes calm but unreadable. Rhea shrugged. "You should rest more. At your age—" "Rhea," Meera interrupted softly but firmly. "We need to talk." There was something in her tone, steady, deliberate, that made Rhea hesitate for the first time. "About what?" "About this house," Meera said, taking a folded envelope from her sari's edge. "And about the lies written on these papers." Rhea froze. "What? What papers?" Meera laid the forged documents on the table between them. "The ones where you and Arjun claim ownership. With my signature." For a second, Rhea's mask slipped. Then she laughed, high, nervous, dismissive. "Ma, you must be mistaken. Maybe you signed these earlier and forgot. You're not young anymore." "I may be old," Meera cut in, her voice rising for the first time. "But not senile. I remember every word I've ever signed in my life. And this," she tapped the page, "is not my hand." Arjun entered just then, drawn by the tension. "What's going on here?" Meera turned to him, her voice quiet again but filled with steel. "Ask your wife." Rhea's eyes darted between them. "She's confused, Arjun. I told you she's been acting strange lately. Enough. Meera's tone sliced through the air. Do you know what your father wrote in his will, Arjun? Arjun frowned. His will? You said it was lost. That's what she told you, Meera replied, her gaze fixed on Rhea. But it wasn't lost. It was hidden. And I found a part of it. She pulled out the torn fragment, now laminated for protection. The faded ink glimmered faintly in the morning light. Your father left this house only in my name, and upon my death, it would go to a charitable trust for widows and children. Not to you. Not to her. Arjun's face drained of color. That can't be. Rhea took a step forward, her voice trembling. That's not even a complete document. It doesn't prove anything. Meera looked at her sharply. You're right. It's not complete. But you know what will prove everything? The original copy your husband filed with the lawyer. The same lawyer who handled our family papers for 20 years. Rhea's lips parted. For the first time, she looked afraid. I called him last night, Meera continued softly. He's coming today, with the registered will. Silence thundered in the room. The ticking clock was suddenly deafening. Rhea's face twisted. You think anyone will believe you? I run this house. Everyone respects me. Meera stepped closer, her voice low, her eyes unwavering. Respect isn't demanded, Rhea. It's earned. And you've earned nothing but pity. She turned to Arjun. You stood silent when she mocked me. When she locked my room. When she tried to erase your father's memory for her gain. But silence doesn't absolve guilt. It deepens it. Arjun swallowed hard, his voice cracking. I didn't know. I swear I didn't. I know, Meera said, her tone softening for a brief moment. But now you do. The sound of a car horn outside broke the silence. The lawyer had arrived. Rhea's breath quickened. You can't do this to me, she hissed. If you expose me, everyone will know. They should know, Meera replied. They should see the truth you've buried beneath your pride. Within minutes, the living room was filled again. This time, not with laughter and lights, but with reality. The lawyer unfolded the original will, and every word echoed like a verdict. When he read aloud the clause naming Meera as the sole owner, Rhea's legs gave way. She collapsed into a chair, her eyes wide and unblinking. Arjun stood motionless, his hands trembling. I'm so sorry, Ma. Meera didn't look at him. Her eyes stayed on Rhea, calm, steady, victorious in silence. This house, she said slowly, was built with love, sacrifice, and faith. You turned it into a stage for arrogance. But today, the curtain falls. Rhea's voice came out as a whisper. Where will I go? Meera turned away, her expression unreadable. Where you should have let me go that day, out the door. The lawyer began packing his files. The truth had been spoken. As the afternoon sun spilled through the window, Meera walked to the balcony. The same home that once felt like a cage now felt vast, alive, reclaimed. Her husband's photograph hung on the wall nearby. She looked at it, her voice barely a whisper. I kept my promise, Rajesh. They will never take what you built. And for the first time in years, she smiled, quietly, peacefully, like a woman who had finally returned home. 2 weeks had passed since the truth came out. The house was silent again, but not empty. It breathed differently now, no longer under the weight of lies. Rhea had left the next morning. No shouting, no apologies, no tears. Just a note on the kitchen counter. I'll take responsibility for my choices. Arjun stayed behind, carrying guilt heavier than words could ease. Meera watched him move through the house like a shadow. He spoke little, ate little, worked late. She didn't push him. Some wounds needed quiet to heal. The neighbors who once saw her as the forgotten mother now greeted her with respect. Some brought flowers. Others offered sympathy. Meera accepted both with a calm smile. She didn't crave pity, only peace. Every morning she stood on the balcony with her tea. The sun rose behind the neem tree, and for the first time, she could watch it without feeling trapped. One afternoon, Arjun knocked on her door. Ma, he said softly. "I've been thinking." "Maybe you should go on that trip now," she looked at him. "Trip?" "To your sister's. You wanted to go before all this." A small smile touched her lips. "And who will take care of the house?" He gave a faint laugh. "I think I can manage." For the first time in weeks, they both smiled. Just a little, but enough. That evening, Meera pulled out the same small bag she had packed weeks ago. The shawl was still folded neatly inside, the scent of lavender faint but present. She added a few books, some letters, and a framed photo of her husband. As she zipped the bag, she noticed a folded envelope on her dresser. It was addressed in shaky handwriting, Rhea. She hesitated, then opened it. "Ma, I don't ask for forgiveness. I know what I did. But I wanted you to know, I've gone to the same trust your husband wrote about. I'm helping with their legal work. Maybe it's too little, too late. But I'm trying." Meera stood still for a long moment. No anger, no tears. Just a deep exhale. The next day, as the car rolled out of the driveway, she glanced back once. The house didn't feel like a battlefield anymore. It was simply a home again. At her sister's seaside cottage, the days passed quietly. The waves were steady, the wind cool, the evenings simple. Meera spent her time reading, cooking, walking along the shore. Sometimes she'd catch herself smiling for no reason. One evening, she sat with her sister looking at the fading sunset. "You always loved the sea," her sister said. Meera nodded. "Because it knows how to take everything, pain, anger, secrets, and return peace." They sat in silence for a while. Then her phone buzzed. A message from Arjun. "Ma, I've started restoring the house. The charity will open a small center there. Your idea. Love you," she smiled faintly. Her husband's dream, once hidden and almost stolen, was now alive. A few months later, Meera returned home, not as a guest, not as someone tolerated, but as the heart of the family again. The main hall had changed. The photographs she once dusted quietly were now framed proudly along the wall. One photo, her husband's portrait, had been moved to the center. Below it, a brass plaque read, "The Rajesh Meera Foundation, a home for hope." Children from nearby villages came there every afternoon for food and lessons. Their laughter filled the same halls that once echoed with scorn. Rhea never returned, but letters came every few weeks, updates, donations, apologies written between the lines. Meera never replied, but she always read them. Forgiveness wasn't a word she needed to say. It lived in how she chose to live now. One morning, Arjun joined her for tea on the balcony. "Ma," he said quietly, "I've been meaning to ask, do you ever regret forgiving her?" Meera looked at the street below, where a few children were playing with chalk and marbles. "I didn't forgive her," she said. "I forgave myself for staying silent too long." Arjun's eyes glistened. "You've changed," she smiled. "No, I've just remembered who I was before the silence." The wind moved through the neem leaves, soft and rhythmic. In the distance, a bell rang from the nearby temple. The house felt lighter, the air gentler. Meera sipped her tea slowly and whispered, almost to herself, "Peace doesn't come when others change. It comes when you stop waiting for their apology." She set the cup down and stood, looking at the sunlight stretching across the floorboards. Her journey had started with a canceled trip, but it ended with a return to herself. Morning sunlight spilled softly across Meera's living room, touching the floor tiles like a quiet blessing. It was the same house, the same walls, same windows, yet it felt reborn. Where bitterness once lived, peace now lingered. The house no longer echoed with orders, judgments, or silence. It hummed with laughter, footsteps, and the calm rhythm of life restored. Meera stood by the window, holding her cup of tea. The steam curled upward, catching the light, just as her thoughts did. So much had happened in so little time. Betrayal, humiliation, justice. All of it had reshaped her, carved her into someone stronger, quieter, and far more complete than before. She looked at the old travel bag resting on the shelf. the same one she'd packed when Rhea told her not to go. It was still zipped, still waiting. But now, it meant something entirely different. It wasn't a symbol of escape anymore. It was a reminder of courage found in stillness, of freedom reclaimed without stepping out the door. Her phone buzzed with a notification. Arjun's message glowed on the screen. "Ma, the first group of children arrived today. They're starting their classes." I wish you could see their smiles. Meera smiled, her heart swelling quietly. She typed back, "I don't need to see them. I can already feel it." Later that day, she walked through the newly opened community center, the Rajesh Meera Foundation. Children were drawing with colored chalk on the marble floor, their laughter echoing through the corridors. A few elderly women were seated near the courtyard, learning to read, their wrinkled hands tracing alphabets with trembling hope. Meera paused by the main wall, where her husband's portrait hung beside a quote she had chosen. "A home isn't built by walls and wealth. It's built by hearts that refuse to turn cold." Her fingers brushed the frame. "We did it," she whispered. "Your dream didn't die in those papers. It lives here, in every smile." As she turned, a small girl ran up to her, holding a crumpled drawing. "Auntie, this is you." The picture showed a woman standing under a big tree, arms open, smiling at the sun. Meera chuckled softly. "You've given me too much hair." The girl grinned. "You look like someone who helps people grow." Those words lingered in Meera's chest long after the girl ran off. Someone who helps people grow. Yes, that was who she had become. Not the quiet, invisible mother who folded into the background, but a woman who found her strength in kindness and her dignity in truth. That evening, Rhea's letter arrived. The envelope was plain, the handwriting unsure. Meera sat by the lamp and unfolded it slowly. "Ma, I've been working at the Foundation's branch in Jaipur. I see now what I tried to take from you. Not property, but purpose. I used to think control made me powerful. Now I know. Service does. I don't expect your forgiveness. I only hope that one day I'll deserve your respect again." The paper trembled in her hands, but her eyes were dry. She whispered softly, "You already earned it, the moment you began to change." Meera didn't reply with a letter. Instead, she made a call the next morning. When Rhea answered, her voice was hesitant. "Ma?" Meera's tone was calm, gentle. "There's a children's art camp next month. Come and help. Bring your ideas. They'll need your energy." There was silence. Then a small, shaky exhale from the other end. "You want me to come?" "Yes," Meera said. "Because redemption doesn't start with forgiveness. It starts with doing something good." For the first time in a long while, both women smiled, not as enemies or rivals, but as two people finally learning what family truly means. A few weeks later, the courtyard was alive again, children painting, women weaving, laughter spilling into the street. Rhea stood by Meera's side, her face humbler, her heart lighter. Arjun watched them from a distance, gratitude glistening in his eyes. "I almost lost both of you," he said softly. Meera turned to him. "Sometimes you have to lose what's false to find what's real." The three of them stood together as the sun began to set, a picture of healing, imperfect but whole. That night, Meera finally opened her old travel bag. Inside were the same clothes, the same shawl, and a small journal she'd once planned to write her memories in. She took it out and began to write, her handwriting steady and serene. "I thought my journey was a trip I never took, but life had other plans. It sent me down a path of pain, truth, and peace. I didn't go to the seaside because I found my ocean right here, within me." She closed the journal and looked out the window. The sky was dark, but the stars were bright, as if life itself was whispering back to her. "You made it." A soft smile touched her lips. She whispered into the still air, "Some trips don't need suitcases. They need courage." And with that, Meera turned off the light, her story complete, her heart finally free.